How well do you monitor your kids' social media? How comfortable is your child talking to you about intimate things? Just how well is your relationship with your kids? If you are a parent, you need to listen to this episode and you need to discuss it with your children. If you think that they're too young to have this sort of conversation, then they are too young to be on social media. And I say that because this is what's happening. Join me as we dive into the Catfish Killer. Please note that the content of this recording may contain graphic material including torture and explicit language may be used. The opinions are of my own and may be offensive to some listeners. They are my opinions. Everyone has them, and if you do not agree, then ignore them like an adult and move on. Listener discretion is strongly advised. Hey guys, welcome to the Reverend Knox. I'm your host, Amy.
And I'm Jamie.
And today I've got a really screwed up story for you. And like I said in the intro, if you all have children, you definitely need to listen to this episode. I am very fortunate that my kids are grown now. You'll see why.
I thank God every day my kids are grown.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and get started. Alexander McCartney was born on April 2nd, 1998. He attended Newry High School and was a gamer. He was introverted and socially awkward.
He's the basement guy.
Yeah. He was edgy, but a lot of people didn't know that about him. He took a class at Southern Regional College and was described as quiet and didn't really get involved in class. In 2019, he was a student at Ulster University studying computer science in 2019 when he was first charged. Now, guys, this all happened in Ireland, but it does affect the United States, and you'll see why. A neighbor stated that he came across as pleasant, affable, and a very intelligent young man. There was nothing really extraordinary about him, but his crimes were extraordinary, to say the least. He had no abuse growing up. He had a normal, stable childhood. His family and those around him, the events that took place have been horrific. When neighbors said that they were stunned, people began whispering in the beginning, but they couldn't believe it, and they couldn't believe that it was actually true. People never talked outside about it because you just didn't know what to say. Now, what do you think that could happen? That people were so dumbfounded and so shocked by it that they didn't have anything to say. Like they didn't know what to say about it.
I can't imagine. Like everybody's always got something to say.
Yeah. Some of his victims were as young as 3 years old.
What?
Yep. So what did this young guy do that could be so horrific? Well, Alexander McCartney had pleaded guilty to 185 charges. 1 count of manslaughter, 14 counts of causing or inciting a girl under 13 to engage in sexual activity involving penetration, 32 counts of causing or inciting a girl between the ages of 13 and 16 to engage in sexual activity involving penetration, 9 counts of causing a girl under 13 to engage in sexual activity, 14 counts of causing a girl aged between 13 and 16 to engage in sexual activity, 58 counts of blackmail, 29 counts of making indecent images of children, 11 counts of distributing indecent images of children, 2 counts of causing a person to engage in sexual activity without consent, 12 counts of possessing indecent images of children, 1 count of intimidation, 1 count possessing prohibited images of children, and 1 count of sexual communication with a child. The pleas of guilty were entered on 5 separate dates between January 2021 and March of 2024. As a result of these pleas, a potentially lengthy trial was avoided. The
Th-
sen-
this takes like cyberbullying. It's not just cyberbullying. That's like insane.
Oh yeah, it's bad. You just wait till you hear exactly how he pulled this off. The sentence, um, obviously you'll get to we'll get to the sentence at the very end, um, but it does reflect some of the depravity, and then the investigation. The people that do investigations across seas, they do an excellent job on their investigations. I mean, they do a wonderful job. The only issues I have with the justice system across the pond is their sentencing.
Oh,
Yeah, I have issues with their sentencing. The counts to which Alexander involved young girls ages between 10 and 16, they happened on social media, and he used Snapchat, Instagram, messenger sites like Kik and Omegle, Omegle. Not sure what that is.
I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, he engaged in what is known as catfishing. He pretended to be a young teenage girl and deceived his victims into sending sexual images of themselves. Uh, and then once they done that, he would reveal his true intent and threatened, which hence the blackmail charges, with exposure in order to force them to perform sexual acts on themselves and even their younger siblings, and on occasion a dog, before demanding that they send those videos and pictures to him. Now, I must say, the plan was perfect. I mean, he had those kids where he wanted them, and I can imagine their struggle. It was beyond horrific. His victims were located all over the world in at least 31 countries, including the United States.
Wow.
The investigation, which was brought to its conclusion, has been international in nature with the cooperation between a number of police forces and law enforcement agencies, coordinated through the Police Service of Northern Ireland. Except in the very few cases where the victims came forward, police have had great difficulty in locating those who were affected by his conduct. They only had social media usernames available to them. And you know how usernames are, they usually are nowhere near close to the actual names.
Right.
In many instances, it has only been possible to discern the age of a particular victim by estimating their age from the images discovered and from the content of conversations recovered from Alexander's various digital devices. Some victims who were able to be identified deny that they were even involved when they were approached by law enforcement, even though their photographs suggested they had been. The prosecution has described the harm caused by Alexander as unquantifiable. The judge accepts that description, subject to the provision that the harm is inevitably and indisputably large. There are young girls with younger siblings all over the world whose childhoods have been scarred by Alexander, and in many cases, that fact may not even yet be known to their parents. So, this is what this creep would do. In order to carry out this abuse, Alexander set up false online profiles in the names of girls. He would use like Chloe 1313X, Anna 132X, Hannah 133X, sort of like that. These usernames were conceived in the style of online profiles of teenage girls. He targeted young girls who were either gay or who were exploring their sexuality with other girls, and he did so by posing himself as a young teenage girl who was struggling with body image and her sexuality. And so he was reaching out to others with similar issues. In doing so, he preyed on their insecurity. Now, his choice of victim was particularly calculating and sinister because the fact that they were exploring homosexuality added an additional layer of security to his actions. In order for those girls he preyed on to report what had happened to them, they would have to admit to their parents not only that they had nude images of themselves online, but that they also might be gay.
Oh, like use that saying, hey, I'm going to tell your secret. If you don't, X.
Well, not only that, but he would, after So I'll tell you this in just a minute, but you're getting a little bit ahead of me. He would basically, pretend like, he was insecure, and then he would tell them how beautiful they were. He would talk them into sending them, like a nude photo of like maybe their chest or whatever, compliment on them. Whenever he got what he wanted, then he would come out and tell them, okay, you've just been catfished. You're now going to tell me and do anything that I want you to do. And if you don't, these photos that you've just sent is going to go to every single person in your contact list.
Wow.
Yeah.
And of course, being young and naive, they believed it.
Mm-hmm. So, he was able to convince them of his abilities through technical knowledge, and he said he had a degree in computer science, so they believed him. On occasions, he sent images indicating their location using snap maps.
Don't know what that is.
I don't.
Oh, wait. Snapchat, your location's on.
Yeah. Showing them that he knew where they lived and where they went to school. To give one specific example, he threatened one particular victim that he would put her image online and get people to go to her home and rape her.
Oh my God.
Andrew's method was described by the prosecution as being formulaic. He would demand that the girls obey him, that they acted quickly, and that they remained in the chat forum with him. He would usually specify a period, often a number of hours, during which they would be required to comply. He often extended the time period as he wished, knowing that they were helpless to resist. Sometimes he would demand the return into the chat at a particular time or on a future day. This engagement could be for as little as an hour, but some victims were contacted repeatedly. On one occasion, there was a gap of a month. As an additional incentive to give in to his demands, he would promise to delete all the images of his victim after it was over. He did not, however, keep his promise because multiple images of his victims were later recovered from his devices by the police. He required the girls to provide naked images and to adopt sexual poses and perform sexual acts for him to watch, often while touching themselves and masturbating. He would demand that they would include their faces in the images. Commonly, the sex acts were penetrative in nature. He would also demand that they involve a younger sibling and would order them to commit sexual acts on the other child, again including vaginal and anal penetration. These siblings included some who were as young as 3 and 5 years of age. In one instance, a 13-year-old victim said that her 11-year-old sister was throwing up and did not want to do it. When she sent some images, he claimed greater power over her, saying that he had pictures and video of her doing sexual acts with her sister. He then demanded 30 more minutes and added that the images had to include her sister's face. When she told him that she would go to the police, he said that he was secure because he had been doing this for years.
Wow.
Alexander found even more ways to degrade and humiliate his victims. He ordered them to urinate and defecate on themselves or in the floor. Other degradations included the handling of feces. Alexander made one girl write on herself in marker that she was his little fuck toy. Alexander then had an image of her doing so. Alexander ordered the girls to record the acts which he was requiring them to perform and send him pictures and videos. These were for his own sexual gratification. It was apparent from many of these exchanges that he was masturbating. The prosecution asserts that the chat conversations recovered from Alexander's devices make for the most disturbing reading for any normal person, and he couldn't imagine how disturbing it was for any parent. The responses from the children are pitiful. In their desperation, they begged for him to stop and pleaded for assurances that their images would not be put on the internet or sent to their friends or family members. Many of them were crying and shaking and were terrified by the situation that he had put them in. Typically, his responses to their cries were cold and he simply repeated his demands. Some of his victims told him that they would kill themselves as they pleaded with him to leave them alone. Others, in desperation, threatened to harm themselves. Some did so on camera. One victim sent him a number of videos pleading with him before sending him an image of a significant cut to her arm, which was bleeding. His response was lacking in any natural human empathy. When another victim repeatedly said that she would kill herself and that her mother was dying from cancer and from a heart defect, his response, "I don't give a shit about your mom."
Wow.
His indifference to the plight of his victims was demonstrated by his most serious single crime, which was manslaughter, when his conduct caused a 12-year-old Samarin Thomas in West Virginia to commit suicide by shooting herself in the head with her father's gun.
Oh my God.
I'll get to that one. Sometimes the ordeal in which the victims were subjected to lasted for several hours, and often Alexander would return to a victim on further occasions. It is clear from the forensic analysis of his devices that he was engaging in abuse compulsively, often throughout the night. Some of his victims asked why he was doing what he was doing, and he gave a variety of explanations. These included explanations in which he could have been honest, such as, "I'm just messed up and into weird stuff."
That's accurate.
Yeah. "And I just get this urge where I like to be in full control sexually." I think that's a true statement.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Elsewhere, he made false allegations against his own parents by saying, for instance, that his mom and dad were not nice people and they had been in prison for abusing him. That's a lie. He also claimed that he was adopted when he was about 9 or 10 years old. That's a lie. Furthermore, he claimed that his parents had molested him a lot. Another lie. None of the allegations against his own parents were true. He used multiple devices over the period of offending, replacing them when they were seized by police. Even when he only had a phone, he continued. Okay, this is where I get irritated.
Yeah, because it sounds like he got caught to start with. They took away his right, but they left him with a phone.
All right, let's turn up the heat on that blood. Even when he was on police bail and not supposed to have any mobile phone or any device, he continued. So, Alexander first came to the attention of police approximately 9 years ago. In his home in Newry, they searched it on January 20th, 2016. At that point, he was 17 years old. He lived with his parents and his siblings. A large number of electronic devices were seized, including 8 computer towers, 4 laptops, 8 tablets, 9 mobile phones. Indecent images of children were found on 4 of the devices, 1 of each type: a laptop, a computer tower, a tablet, and a phone. Across all of the devices was a total of the following indecent images: 650 images, including 623 pictures, 27 videos, 704 images, including 693 pictures and 11 videos, 136 images, including 2,128 pictures and 8 videos, for a grand total of 3,490 pictures. There were also 408 prohibited images of children. 245 of these images were recovered from a Packard Bell laptop. Analysis revealed that the internet chat service Omegle, Omegle, I don't know if you just say it like that or if you say it as a word, had been used to send a message undated with the words, "I am willing to show anything you want on Kick for lots of pictures of hot teen girls." The last logon for his laptop was recorded as being on March 16th, 2014, shortly before his 16th birthday.
This kid figured this out early.
Mm-hmm.
Where were his parents?
I don't know. A computer tower with only 14 images on it revealed that on August 13th, 2014, a file had been sent to an account on the computer. However, the file transfer would stop by the remote user and the file did not transfer completely. The examination of his tablet device, which held over 3,000 images, found that applications entitled Hide Pictures, Keep Safe Vault, and Keep Safe had been installed. These applications were used to hide files. The Keep Safe application had been used to protect the indecent images of children within it. Further examination of Alexander's mobile phone revealed deleted chat conversations showing him demanding images. One girl from whom he demanded nude images said, "I just want to kill myself, okay?" His response was to tell her that she was on her final warning. He demanded a picture of her breasts and face. He said that if she did not provide them, then everyone on Instagram would see the photographs she had already sent. When she said that she thought she was going to die, he said, "I don't care."
Wow.
As already indicated, a number of devices were seized during the police search of his home on January 20th, 2016. After these had been analyzed, he was arrested and interviewed on February 4th, 2016, before being released on bail.
Why did they even set a bail for this guy?
Don't know. His home was searched on a further 3 occasions. On March 21st, 2018, more evidence was found, and in turn, found a further 23 victims. Again, on March 18th, 2019, 18 more victims was found. And then on July 30th, when the evidence of his abuse was recovered from his phone, they found an additional 20 victims. This means that subsequent to his first arrest and interview in February 2016, he made contact with at least 61 more victims.
Oh my God, he just kept on and on and on.
Yes. It is apparent that he continued offending regardless of his attention to police, the seizure of the electronic devices, and despite the fact that he was on bail. So the prosecution contends that there was an escalation in the seriousness of his conduct as time went on, and the depravity of his demands just increased. Now, during the first search in 2016, the police found a handwritten note which began with the words, "Dear Mom and Dad, I would like to say sorry and explain." In this note, he claimed that when he was 15, he himself had been the victim of catfishing, and that he had been deceived into sending compromising images of himself with the other person threatening to ruin his life. This note suggested that he had been made to do the same thing to other people and that he had been directed how to do it by using a false profile picture to pretend that he was a girl.
Is this him trying to shift blame onto somebody else?
Yes, so he's going to use this. The note suggested that he had been made to do the same thing to other people, and he had been directed how to do it by using a false profile picture to pretend that he was a girl. His letter concluded, "Since September, I have wanted to end it one way or the other, as he had the power to ruin my life. I shouldn't live with the guilt anymore, and I have been depressed ever since. I should have stopped a long time ago, and I was stupid, so it spiraled out of control. So I can't take it anymore. I'm so sorry. Goodbye. I love you all." When he was interviewed by police for the first time, February 4th, 2016, he maintained to them that the same story which he set out in the letter to his parents was true. He named the person that he engaged with online as Sarah and claimed that they had exchanged indecent images, as a result of which he was blackmailed by the person who was the true individual behind the profile, Sarah. He suggested that He knew why the police were conducting the investigation, that there was an image uploaded to a certain website and he had been told to make the post. He said that he thought he had done so 3 times. He then told police that from August and September of 2015, the person who was manipulating him wanted him to engage in the type of behavior which had trapped him at the start. That is, obtaining naked images of other people. He said that he had not wanted to do this and that it caused him to be depressed. He said that he had contemplated suicide, but he could not go through with it, so he continued to meet that individual's demands. When police asked how the other person had benefited from him doing that, his answer was he just thought they were lazy and wanted someone else to do the work for him. This issue is of some significance in the case overall because the prosecution suggested that the account is dishonest. There is no evidence that he was ever catfished by anyone, and that what in effect Alexander did was lay the groundwork in advance. In the case police ever caught up with him, he would already have a made-up story or an explanation for his actions.
That sounds more legit, because this guy ain't stupid.
Obviously. The prosecution also highlighted the fact that the note prepared for his parents is unlikely to be true or honest in any sense after his arrest on February 4, 2016, and his release on bail, because he simply continued to offend until his final arrest in July 2019. In other words, Alexander was going to say that to his parents that he had wanted to end it one way or another before 2016, and he could not live with the guilt anymore. But he continued offending, and not only did he continue, but he stepped it up.
Of course he did.
So,
Yeah, because he wasn't. That was all words, and it was. This is just pissing me off.
So, as this case was progressing, efforts were being made around the world by a number of law enforcement agencies to identify the children involved. Because, they had all this evidence. There were over 3,000 victims, and there was over 31 countries. I mean, this thing is huge.
Yeah, but what pisses me off right now is the fact that he got let out. They already had all this evidence, and he got let out.
Yep.
Why? Can somebody out there answer why the fuck?
It's across the pond. Like I said.
Okay, over there across the pond. We got listeners over there.
They do great work when it comes to investigation. I mean, they are, if I die, I want them looking. I mean, I want them invested. They do, amazing work in their investigation. However, I want my killer to be sentenced over here.
Yeah, so there's a thing. Like, we need to send our investigators over there to learn how to investigate. They need to come over here and learn how
to sentence their people.
Right.
Yeah.
Although I'm not in full agreement with sentencing across the board by no means, because I feel like in the justice system there's a lot of injustice, even here.
Yeah. I mean, let me back up a little bit.
But we have more stringent consequences than clearly what they have over there.
Yeah, when they do it right. I mean, our justice is great if it's done correctly. My problem is a lot of times it doesn't get done correctly, and justice don't get served where it should be.
Half the time, I think our biggest problem is the fact that we have all this red tape that is causing us to put off and put off and put off the actual process.
Yeah, the criminals have more rights than what they should have.
Yeah, but we're innocent until proven guilty.
Well, even after you're proven fucking guilty, you still have right after right after right after right, even though your victim, you took all their rights away. So why should you have any rights?
Right. I mean, I agree with that.
You should have a right to a fair trial.
Mm-hmm.
You should be able to appeal it, especially if your lawyer was shit, And then after that, it's done. You should, if you got death row, then you should be killed. If you got life without parole, then that's it.
But you got to get to that point, because you can be charged all day long, but you got to get convicted. And that's the thing. They go forever and a day before they actually get to the point of convicting someone. It's court case after court case after postponement. Everybody's able to throw all kinds of wrenches in there.
Now, you got a right to a speedy trial. You know, they've got that. They've got that law in place. So they've almost got that taken care of.
Yeah, you as an offender have a right to a speedy trial. However,
It's just,
if they know they're guilty, they're going to put it off.
Oh, yeah. They'll put it off as much as they can.
Because they still have their freedom.
Yeah. And then they appeal the shit out of it, you know?
It's a double-edged sword, really, when you think about it.
So on January 20th, 2021, the investigation team received information from Homeland Security in the United States of America. A 12-year-old child named Samarin Thomas, and I solely, from the depths of my heart, apologize if I have mispronounced her name. Unfortunately, I cannot go to dictionary.com and have it pronounced for me. So I am so sorry if I mispronounced her word. But she was from West Virginia, and she was a beautiful, beautiful little girl. For those of you who are on YouTube, you'll see her picture. But she took her own life on May 10th, 2018, when she was online with this fucker. The chat conversation between her and Alexander was recovered from his laptop, which was seized on March 18th, 2019. The interaction between Alexander and Samaran began when he contacted her on Snapchat at about 4 a.m. on May 7th, 2018. Now in West Virginia, that would have been approximately 11 p.m. on May 6th. The evidence recovered from his laptop was that he used the profile name Sarah131X to introduce himself, and within a short time, a very short time, he had induced her to send a topless photograph and a video of her digitally penetrating herself. 15 minutes into the chat, he told her that he now had her nudes and face. So now she was going to do everything that he told her to do tonight, where he was going to upload everything online for everyone to see, including everyone on her Instagram account. He kept her online for a further 1 3/4 hours until 6 a.m. Northern Irish time or 1 a.m. time in West Virginia.
It's Eastern.
Yeah. In the course of this 2-hour nightmare for her, Alexander demanded sexual photographs from her. He ordered her to do multiple degrading and humiliating acts, many of which she complied with. They included, but were not limited to, posing for him in various sexual positions in underwear and naked, uttering sexual phrases, demanded that she include her younger sister, urinating and defecating. He made her include her face in images and concluded by telling her that she had done well and that she could block him and that he would delete the images which she had sent him. But 2 nights later, he contacted her again. This time, he used a different profile. It was just after midnight in Northern Ireland, 7:24 p.m. in West Virginia. When she told him to go and to leave her alone, he replied by indicating that he felt like she had made him rush at the end of the exchange 2 nights earlier. So if she wanted him to delete the images, she had to play with him one more time. She was coerced into agreeing to stay with him for 1 hour and began to send more pictures. It appears from the exchange that she was very distressed and may have begun to cry. He then asked her to include her brother, but she told him she didn't have one. From the exchanges, it appears that she sent a photograph of her 9-year-old sister. Alexander responded to say that he wanted to see her topless as well. When she protested no, that she wasn't going to do that, it was just going to be her, he said that he would start uploading and spreading everything. She said that she would shoot herself, and his response was, "Good luck and goodbye. You'll see what happens by tonight." I tried to be nice by offering to delete them for you. The conversation concluded after just 33 minutes. 3 minutes later, Samaran was found by her 9-year-old sister. She had gone into her parents' bedroom, her parents being out for the evening, found her father's gun, and killed herself with it. When her sister found her body, she picked up Samara's phone and hit the panic button, which caused 911, the emergency number. On the advice of the operator, the 9-year-old girl ran to the neighbor's house. The neighbor returned with her and found Samaran unresponsive. The ambulance arrived shortly after, and Samaran was pronounced dead shortly after midnight on May the 11th, 2018. Her sister said that Samaran had told her parents that she thought she might be bisexual. At the time, there was no other reason that anyone was aware of that might have led her to kill herself. But that was not the end of the tragedies that had fallen on that family. Mr. Ben Thomas, her father, took his own life in January 2020. It appears that he always felt particularly guilty about her death, which had a huge impact on him. He reported to have lost interest in life. He had a seizure and was diagnosed with epilepsy, which caused him to lose his job. Can you imagine you lose your daughter and don't know why? Then you get diagnosed with a scary illness and lose your job. It was only in April 2021, almost 3 years later, that her mother learned why she had killed herself and how Alexander's need for sexual gratification had torn her family apart.
Wow. Why would she need such sexual gratification that early in life?
Well, it's not, she didn't need the sexual gratification, he did.
It was the Alexander.
Yeah, she was trying to figure out her body and figure out, you know how it is. Am I happy being a girl, or am I interested in girls? Am I interested in boys? I mean, I never was like that, but I'm sure some kids are.
I wasn't either at age 12. Like, that was the furthest thing from my mind.
Yeah, well, you know how it is now, and you got Snapchat, you got all these kids, and some are bisexual and some are gay. We didn't have that back in the day, but now you do.
Yeah.
And then I definitely know how it is to be insecure with your body.
Oh, I know that for sure.
You got somebody who's supposed to be another little girl, saying, and she's insecure too. And, she might be saying, look at my boobs. You see how they are, And she'll be like, oh, well, look at mine. You think yours is bad. And sends a picture, something like that.
Thinking she's talking to another girl.
Yeah, and she's not. She's talking to a fucktard.
This is a huge wake-up call for parents across the board.
Mm-hmm.
For the fact that we put devices in our children's hands at such an early age.
That's why I'm saying that in my beginning, I had put down, you need to have this conversation with your child. And if you think your child is too young for this conversation, then they don't need to be on social media, because this is what's going on.
Exactly. And if you cannot take the time to review what's going on, or make sure that parental guidance is in place on their devices, you are opening up your child to an entire world of predators. And it falls back on the parents.
Exactly. Your job is to protect these kids, And another thing that bothers me is a lot of parents have issues talking to their children about intimate things.
We should be so far past that.
I know.
Sex should not be such a taboo subject any longer.
No.
For our families and our children.
It was so taboo in my house. I mean, that was such a bad word. But my house, when my boys were in middle school, I set them boys down. And I talked to them like other kids would talk to them. I used their words. you
Yeah.
know?
I did with mine too.
And I explained to them, and their faces got red and stuff. And it's like, hey, look, there's nothing to be embarrassed of. This is what happens. This is how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
And because I wanted them to learn sex from me, not the way I learned it from other kids, because I wanted them to know the facts.
Yeah.
And this is what happens. If a girl says she's on birth control, she's lying, is what I told them.
They're all lying.
Yes, you protect yourself at all costs. Because
Mhm.
if they're going to do it, they're going to do it regardless.
And not just about birth control, but protection, period.
Yeah, because there's all kinds of diseases and shit. But also, you've got predators out there that's online that we didn't have back in the day.
I know. Like, I was thinking today on the way back from the grocery store, and I don't know what got me thinking this, but I was like, exactly what did we do before we had phones? I think it was my panic because I thought I left my phone in the buggy at the store. And when I realized it was there, I was like, the sheer panic I just had over my phone was absolutely ridiculous. And I kind of scolded myself in silence on my way home. But in my head, then it takes me down this rabbit hole. Our entire lives are carried around on our phones as adults.
Mm-hmm.
Just like on Thanksgiving, we got all the kids in the living room and we're just trying to get them to watch something on TV. And we look up and all of our grown ass kids
Are on the
get
phone.
they won't get their nose out of their phones. And I'm like,
You
how
got
did we
to watch
get here?
this. Yeah.
Now imagine taking a 12 or 13-year-old out of that now.
Mm-hmm.
As stubborn as they are, and their frontal cortex is not developed enough to make those kind of decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And we leave that in their hands. We're asking for it.
Mm-hmm. And let me tell you, if your child came to my house, because I had boys upon boys upon boys that practically lived in my house because their parents did not care where their kids were, and they did not care if they were fed or not. So they lived at my house. They got the talk too. Everybody that came into my house got that talk. And let me tell you, some of those kids came and asked me things, like the intimate things, because they needed advice. They felt comfortable enough. And it's like, there needs to be an adult in your child's life, whether it's you, your sister, your brother, their father, somebody in your group. There needs to be an adult that your child feels comfortable enough to go to and says, hey, I sent a picture of myself with no clothes on, thinking that this person was a girl, and it's not. And now they're threatening to put this online. What do we do? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Like,
These kids were afraid because he had him. Not only did they have to admit that they were sending naked pictures, but also that they were experimenting with their sexuality.
yeah.
Those are two big things that
Yeah.
you do not want to tell your parents. You know what I'm saying?
No, you absolutely don't.
So you need some adult,
Mhm.
somebody in there that is mature enough to know how to handle this situation.
And to not be judgmental.
Yeah.
To be able to put themselves back in
Yeah.
the shoes of a
And
young
if
person.
anything, let them know, hey, you done the right thing.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm proud of you. That's
an adult.
Yeah, that's got to be very courageous of you to do that, because the person that done this, a kid stepped out and done this. That's how this fucker got caught.
Yeah.
Is because one child stepped up, and look how many kids that she ended up saving.
Thank you to that little hero.
Yeah, that child that stepped up. And I'm glad that apparently she had somebody in her life
Yeah.
that she could go to. So anyway, off back on our rant.
Well, it's the old-fashioned beliefs that the sticks in the mud that we grew up around half the time, that you kids are be seen and not heard and stuff like that. No, those days need to be done.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. So that disastrous chain of events that I just told you about was triggered by Alexander in the space of 2.5 hours over 2 nights. That's how quickly, from start to finish.
That's insane that it would drive. That little girl had to be on the brink of something to begin with to be able to be pushed that far like that. The fear she must have had.
I know. Now, it was more than 2 years since he had first been arrested by police, and more than 2 years since police had found that note, which, he said, I should have stopped a long time ago, and he was stupid and it spiraled out of control. Now, the judge stated it was clear beyond any doubt that whatever remorse Alexander now speaks of he was absolutely empty of remorse at the time. As the prosecution has stated, that Alexander's plea to her manslaughter recognizes that, bearing in mind what was known to him, any reasonable person would have realized that his actions were bound to subject Samarin to the risk of physical harm as a result. The prosecution identified 3 instances where children had threatened that they would harm or kill themselves. On one occasion, a girl had inflicted injury on herself by stabbing herself in the torso. When one girl stabbed herself in January 2018 and told Alexander that she had done so, his response to say, right, well, that's on you. In April 2018, just 2 weeks before Alexander's actions, which caused the killing of Samarin, another girl said that she was going to cut her whole arm if she had to. Alexander's response was to say IDC, which means I don't care. The only possible interpretation of these prior incidents is that Alexander knew very well the risk that his actions would result in physical harm, but as himself might put it, he just didn't care.
No, he really didn't care.
He did not. Some victims have shown determination that they will not let Alexander beat them and ruin their lives. Even for them, however, the consequences of what he did to them make for a gruesome reading. When they were allowed to read their impact statements, they described a range of emotions such as depression, anxiety, stress, shame, embarrassment, loss of confidence, difficulty trusting others, and the impact on their own different relationships. For many of them, their childhoods have been stolen. Some have attempted to commit suicide. Others report self-harm and suicidal thoughts. Parents of some of the victims have written impact statements regarding their families, of knowing what has to be done and what was done to their young children and what they would have endured in the years since. Samarin's grandfather, who lost his son Ben, and his granddaughter described how the life he lived and the future he had planned did not exist anymore, and that is something that they'll never get over. Alexander is now 26 years old. He committed the many offenses which he has pleaded guilty from when he was 15 until he was 21. So while he started young, he kept going and got worse and worse. He had no criminal record before these events, but now he has a record of 185 convictions. Now, Miss Laughlin of the Probation Board for Northern Ireland wrote a report that states, and it is not disputed, that he had a happy childhood in a family which lived contently without any traumatic episodes or disruptions. He did reasonably well academically and secured a university place to study in science and computers. His health is reportedly to improve since he was detained. In part, this is due to his use of cannabis. It had ended. In any event, he has no ongoing health issues of any significance. When questioned by Miss Laughlin about the deviant and sadistic nature of his behaviors, he said that they stem from his own imagination, not from what he was viewing online. He told her that he wanted to see how far he could push the victims, to see how far he could control them. His motivation was the level of arousal which he experienced, but he rationalized his abuse by pretending that his victims were not real. It is perhaps telling that during his interview with Miss Laughlin, he did not use the term child or children and told her that when he was offending, if he thought about a real person, this impeded his state of arousal. The judge stated that it is hard to get a sense from her report of any real recognition or acceptance on Alexander's part of harm, which he did, and of the seriousness of his offenses. In his judgment, it is telling that he admitted to her that he specifically decided to target the 10 to 15 age group due to their vulnerability and because they were so naive, they were more likely to comply with his orders. Miss McLaughlin's report states, with some insight, the persistency, seriousness, and complexity of Alexander's involvement in such extensive and harmful offending is unprecedented. It is clear that Alexander was solely motivated by gaining sexual pleasure through exercising coercive control. He gained this from controlling child victims and forcing them to engage in sexual degrading and humiliating behaviors with no regard to the harm he was causing them. He presented as emotionally detached. Now, when the probation board convened in a multidisciplinary risk management meeting in July 2024, the conclusion of those present was that he meets the board's criteria for being assessed as presenting a significant risk of serious harm. This means that he must engage with the prison service, psychology, and program interventions while in custody to prepare for any successful release into the community. In Ms. Laughlin's view, pre-release testing would assist him to apply learning for participation on risk reduction interventions and seek support should he find himself struggling to manage his risk. She anticipated that on release he would be subject to stringent license conditions, and it's anticipated that a sexual offense prevention order will be imposed to assist the management of his risk after his release. The report ends with a long list of suggested post-release license conditions and the possible contents of a sexual offense prevention order. So, a psychologist named Dr. Terry Van Leeson, she's a forensic psychologist, filed a report dated August 2024 with an addendum dated October 2024, states that instructions were to undertake a psychological risk assessment of sexual violence, outline critical risk factors, and then make recommendations for the rehabilitation of the defendant. In the course of his exchanges with Dr. Van Leeson, Alexander contended, as he had done with the police, that he himself was a victim of catfishing. The psychologist's expert opinion was that the defendant does not suffer from any personality disorder. He does not show any signs of narcissism. On her analysis, he became trapped by an established, entrenched cycle of offending over the first 3-year period when he himself was a victim, and he had indicated to her that he was, but by the time he reached 16, cannabis misuse had become a predominant feature. So you're going to blame pot now.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but that's BS.
Yeah. This was used as a strategy to block out and numb anxiety, depression, negative emotional states. She recognizes that there was an opportunity for him to cease offending and to seek help when he was arrested at the age of 17, but he chose not to do so. In her opinion, he does not meet the diagnostic threshold for psychopathy nor the diagnostic criteria for a personality disorder. He took full responsibility for his offending behavior. He verbalized his guilt and shame and did not blame his victims for his actions. Of course, you could ask, how could he blame them? In her view, the fact that he has functioned well in prison and is emotionally connected to his family are positive signs for the future. She concludes that if the defendant was released without treatment, of course, he would pose a high risk to the community. She proposes that his treatment should take a trauma-informed approach. Among other things, she suggests this because, in her opinion, it would enhance his ability to understand the consequences of his actions for his victims. Now, the prosecution has issues with Dr. Leeson's report that he was a victim of catfishing. He said that he has been inconsistent about when he said what took place. He has given no coherent or sensible explanation of why then he catfished others for the benefit of Sarah, who is alleged to be the perpetrator against him, and perhaps above all because the police have analyzed his various devices and have not been able to find any convincing or sustained evidence that he himself was a victim of catfishing. The prosecution also suggests that this was an excuse or self-justification which was written before his first arrest in the note that he never gave to his parents but was found by the police. This issue led to the submission of Dr. Van Leeshen's addendum, which she identifies that critical question. She summarized in her position the following way. Alexander has always given the same accounts to different professionals and to the police as well as herself in the probation service, with the respect that is not entirely correct because there have been some differences in details between the different explanations which have been advanced at various points. She contends that in the absence of any other criminating risk factors, the explanation that he just simply started offending does not stack up psychologically. So people just can't. They got to start somewhere.
Yeah, they do. But I got a great idea. Don't let him out.
Yeah. Now, she encourages the judge to accept that his consistent self-report should be considered to be credible. Once again, with respect, the fact that a sexual offender repeatedly says something does not strike the judge as being a sound reason for considering it to be credible. It can be a consistent false explanation or an excuse rather than a credible one.
That sounds more accurate.
Yeah. So the doctor says finding the absence of evidence at this time does not necessarily mean that something did not happen. Well, the judge stated, this seems to me to be an acknowledgement that despite the police's analysis of many devices, there is no evidence to support his assertions. In my judgment, the absence of evidence points significantly, though not necessarily conclusively, in the direction of something not having happened. It is therefore my conclusion that Alexander has not proved on the balance of probabilities that he himself was the victim of catfishing when he was approximately 14 or 15. And even if I am wrong in that, I find that in the circumstances of this case, any mitigation would be minimal. The fact is that even on his own case, the sadism which he showed to the others far exceeds any specific or identified abuse which Sarah is alleged to have inflicted on him. And lest it be forgotten, he kept on offending in an ever more sinister, dramatic, and appalling manner, even after his first arrest, and his second arrest, and his third arrest.
My God.
Which makes me wonder, how many times are you going to arrest the fucker before you keep him in there and stop him?
Clearly, he's been let out before, and before we got the big one, he kept offending. So what makes him think it's going to be any different?
It's not. In every sentencing exercise, a judge tries to identify the main mitigating and aggravating factors which should be taken into account. So as far as mitigation is concerned, I have already referred to the absence of any other criminal record and to his youth when offending started. I also take into account, as I must do so by law, his pleas of guilty, the value of which have been referred to at the para above. Now, Mr. Berry urged me to consider that Alexander is genuinely remorseful and ashamed of his actions. I accept that there is now finally some limited evidence of remorse, but that comes after he has spent 5 years in prison. It is absolutely and completely absent at all times before 2019. In terms of aggravating factors, I must be careful not to double count the features which are part and parcel of the offenses to which he has pleaded guilty, but the following aggravating features are undoubtedly present: the number of victims, their vulnerability, the involvement of others, including their younger siblings, the involvement of animals, the level of degradation and humiliation, the level and degree of penetrative activity, the planning, the use of threats, the way in which Alexander lied about his age, the period and prevalence of the offending which ran for so many years and did not diminish even during the police investigation and even when he was on bail. Alexander's complete indifference to the impact of his actions, the impact on the various victims, including the families and extended families, the way in which images were recovered, saved, and arranged in folders, the fact that so much offending was committed when he was on bail, the fact that nearly all of these children were abused in their own home where they should have felt safe, And Alexander is remorseless. He ignored multiple opportunities to stop. He ignored multiple pleas for mercy. He lied and then lied again. He had a plan which worked for him and which he stuck to rigidly for his own sexual pleasure. In my judgment, it is truly difficult to think of a sexual deviant who poses a greater risk to the public than Alexander. He could not even bring himself to use the word child to describe his victims. Dr. Van Leesen states that he has a strong sense of right and wrong, and if that's correct, it makes his actions worse, and the risk in the future is greater. If you know what you're doing is so terrible and shockingly wrong, but you keep doing it for years to a defenseless child, what confidence can anyone have that you will change? The judge further stated that he feared that Dr. Van Leesen has been too optimistic in her analysis of Alexander and the risk he imposes to the public, and I agree with that.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that.
So, on one count of manslaughter, he got the maximum, which was life imprisonment. 14 counts of causing or inciting a girl under 13 to engage in sexual activity involving penetration, life in prison. 32 counts causing or inciting a girl between the ages of 13 and 16 to engage in sexual activity involving penetration. He got the maximum 14 years. 9 counts of causing a girl under 13 to engage in sexual activity. He got the maximum 14 years. 14 counts of causing a girl ages between 13 and 16 to engage in sexual activity. Got the maximum 14 years. 58 counts of blackmail. Got the maximum 14 years. 29 counts of making indecent images of children. He got the maximum 10 years. 11 counts of distributing indecent images of children. He got the maximum 10 years. 2 counts of causing a person to engage in sexual activity without consent. He got the maximum 10 years. 12 counts of possessing indecent images of children. He got the maximum 5 years. 1 count of intimidation, maximum 5 years. 1 count of possessing prohibited images of children. He got the maximum, which was 3 years. And 1 count of sexual communication with a child. He got the maximum 2 years. Now, the pleas of guilty were entered on 5 separate dates between January 2021 and March 2024. As a result of these pleas, a potentially lengthy trial was avoided. The sentence which is passed will reflect the fact, because even though in most all cases the evidence was overwhelming, there still is a benefit from guilty pleas. It saves the victims of the crimes from having to give evidence that they were subjected to. Now, just because he got life in prison in all of those years, the minimum is 20. That's my problem.
So that's all he's required to do.
Yes.
But he could spend up to
life.
all the others. So what determines if he gets out or not?
The probation. The board of parole.
Oh, yeah, that burns my ass.
So here's another thing I have issues with the justice system. If you're going to say life in prison, then it should be the rest of your damn life.
Exactly.
If you say 10 years, then it should be 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Regardless. Do your time.
I know. I don't understand why they say life in prison and then you could get out and
Give them
20.
something else.
Then just say fucking 20 years.
Yeah, that makes no sense.
Yeah. Minimum tariff, as they call it over there, 20. So, for all of this, that's what he had. Of course, granted, that is what it is over there. The judge gave him the maximum he can give him on everything. So I commend the judge over there for doing that. He threw the book at him, gave him everything he could give him. And so I commend the judge over there. He done everything he could. I mean,
as he should.
It's not his fault that part's jacked up. But hopefully, the people on the probation board, or the parole board, I should say, will look at this case and see how he's escalated when he was out on bail. And they will never, ever, ever let this guy hold an electronic device or see the light of day again.
I hope not. I hope not.
But that concludes this story. If you like, please subscribe and share. And if you can become a premium member, you get bonus episodes and your episodes ads free. This has been a Southern Sass production. And until next time, avoid rest stops and be safe.
See you guys.